Here is the guest of honor now. Hello, Mr. Deal. How are
Hi,
you?
how's it going? How's everybody doing?
Good. I love your background. That's so nice. So,
Thank
did
you.
you get the PowerPoint I sent for you over?
Yes, thank you.
So, I guess we'll let you share your screen and get started. So, I'll just give a quick little introduction. John is a contract specialist, just like what his name says there. He actually does CROA compliant agreements for the credit repair space. And he has for John, how many years have you been doing that?
I think it's been since 2020 or 2021.
So quite a few
Yeah.
years now. And his agreements are amazing. They protect you, they protect the client, they protect everyone, keep you in compliance. So I'm going to let him go through it because it is important that as we operate in the space that we are operating with CROA compliant agreements. One really cool thing is we own the software Credit Butterfly, and John's contracts, we have all of his CROA compliant agreements inside of Credit Butterfly, which is really awesome. And so that we ensure that you have good compliant contracts. And he's going to go into that a little bit about different templated contracts and things like that, I think, in his presentation. So
Hey, John.
we love John. He's done some really great work for us, as well as he's done a lot of great work for a lot of other people. So he's going to go through and just show you and explain to you the reasons why you need a compliant contract and the benefits to you and your consumers for that. And I'm just going to let him go ahead and share his screen and take over from here.
John, an attorney.
So let me introduce myself. I actually am not an attorney, but I do have a degree in law. My first credit repair organization I had between, I think it was late 80s, early 90s. I started a credit repair organization back before we had computers and technology. So everything was done by hand. And shortly after that, I got married, had a new family, decided I needed to get a more reliable income. So I got a job at local government, and I did that for 20 years. And a little while back, I decided to look back into getting into credit repair again. And that's how I found that several people were struggling with their contracts. And I had gone to school during that time. I was working with the government and decided to go to law school so I could learn more about contracts because I was drafting contracts for that position. And then decided you could offer help to people because I have both the background and contracts and credit repair agreements or credit repair. So that's how I stumbled into this. So I didn't intend to be an attorney and practice law. I just want to do contracts, and you don't have to have it allotted, or you don't have to be an attorney to draft contracts. So I thought it was a great idea, and I learned a lot. And I encourage anybody that wants to learn more about the law. It's good, big commitment, but it's well worth it. So, does anybody have any questions about that before I start going into this, or can everybody see the screen?
I just
Yep,
see
I think you're
you.
good.
Good to go. All right. So we always have a disclaimer. The presentations provided for informational purposes only does not constitute legal advice. I am not an attorney. I don't give legal advice. So be aware that statutes may change over time, especially credit repair agreements. Credit repair statutes do change. California is one of the examples of they constantly are changing theirs. So we always recommend conducting thorough research and verifying your current statutes. So credit repair companies, make sure that you have your agreements that are compliant with both CROA and state credit repair statutes. CROA obviously covers the federal side. They have requirements for their credit repair agreements, and they also require disclosure. 40 plus states have requirements for state required language in their CROA or their credit repair agreements, and also their disclosures. They're not all the same. You can have one distinct difference is some states have longer wait periods or what you call cancellation periods, right? So CROA requires 3 business days and some states require 5. There's one actually, South Carolina, that requires 10, right? So some states, they have nuances and differences in their requirements. And if you have a contract that is considered a template that is provided to you, it is probably not compliant. Not only is it not compliant for state requirements or CROA, but it may not even be a compliant enforceable agreement, right? So there's language that you should have in your agreement that you're not going to know from looking at a CROA or a state credit repair statute, because they don't talk about structure of an agreement and the correct language in agreement, like and TCPA and things like that. Some examples are bond requirements with a lot of states. Those states that do have bond requirements and licensing requirements require the bonding information to be in your disclosure. There are one or two contracts or one or two states that require that information to be in the agreement and not in a disclosure. Term of the agreement. So I typically draft them for 6 months, because if you long-term contract, you can put yourself in a position where the client could argue that didn't realize they were getting into a long-term contract. Some states don't allow long-term contracts, and it's better to have a shorter term, like 6 months, and then have them sign a new agreement after 6 months, because they are willingly getting into that agreement saying, I agree to continue this, and they're signing it. And so it's easier to say, the client did sign another agreement. It wasn't like they didn't know. They signed another agreement, right, if there's a dispute. Are states that have is 180 days specifically in their statute. California, 6 months, right? One state, Ohio, is 60 days. You can only have a 60-day agreement. So you have to have a renewal every 60 days and have them sign a new agreement. It cannot be an automatic renewal, right? Because they have to openly and notoriously know that they're signing and agreeing to those terms. So discuss CROA a little bit, right? That's the federal side. They have their requirements. Some of the requirements that CROA has are also similar to the state requirements. For, in the disclosures, they want the client to know what their rights are before they're signing an agreement. Most of them want you to present the client with a disclosure form before you're entering into an agreement, right? So they know what their rights are. They get the disclosure form, then they get the contract, and they're required to sign both of them. Or actually, if it's a state that requires a disclosure, you've got three. You've got your CROA disclosure, you have your state disclosure, and you have your credit repair contract. And they have to sign all three of them. You cannot put them in one document and have one signature. Both require cancellation notices, right? So at the end of your agreement, you're required to have 2 cancellation notices. One of those is so the client can sign it and send it, and the other one is so they can keep it and track what date they sent it, so they can track it for themselves in case they want to cancel the agreement. Most CROs tell their clients, look, if you want to cancel, just send me an email. I don't care. You can even just tell me over the phone. You don't need to send that to me. I'll cancel it. Want to make things easy for your client, not difficult, in my opinion. Privacy, I mentioned that's the Telecommunication Practices Act, or Privacy Act, and you want to make sure that if you send text messages, emails, voicemails, you want to have that in your agreement, because states like California, they're very strict about that. You're sending people messages or emails, they want to have opted in for those things. They do not want you to be sending those to clients without them saying, I want you to do that, right? So it's very important. Also, on your websites, you need to have privacy notices on your website. And I also encourage you to include that TCPA disclosure also on your website and your privacy.
Hey, John, can we go back to the previous slide? I'm going to ask you some questions on there, because we get a lot of questions.
Yeah.
The bond requirements.
Okay.
When a lot of people come in, a lot of new users come in for the software, or just in general, when we're doing classes, months, we get tons of bond questions. So if we can just cover bonds in a little more detail, let me just ask you some basic questions that
Sure.
I get a lot on those.
Okay.
A lot of people don't even realize you have to be bonded, right? In states, like, not really that known to everyone. So a lot of times people will come in, they didn't even know they needed to have a bond, or that most of them are very inexpensive to go get. They don't really cost that much, right?
Yeah.
California and a couple others.
Right.
Most of them
Those
are
yeah.
pretty, yeah. Are there states that don't require a bond? And you should at least be bonded, in my opinion, at least in your home state, right? Where you're doing business, and maybe a few other states where
Any state that you do business, you should have a state-specific agreement for that state if they require it, and a bond if it's required, and a license if it's required. There are states that do not have bond or licensing requirements. There's some states that have bond requirements without licensing requirements. Most of the states that have licensing requirements do have bond requirements.
Okay, and how can they figure this out? How will somebody be able to know what kind of state requirements that for
Well,
their state? How can they figure out what is their bond, what is their licensing requirement? How can they do that?
Yeah, so they need to do the research and go into some of them are under the Secretary of State for licensing. They go in there and find out, like, you can go into the state Secretary of State website and look up your licensing requirements and stuff like that for California. California requires the whole page document that you have to fill out to send for your application for your license. And you have to do that every year, and you have to renew your bond every year. States, they just have to look up their credit repair statute. Not always easy. It's not an easy thing to do sometimes. You have questions about it, I'm happy to answer it. I can look it up for them. And when I do draft an agreement, I always research the statute again to make sure there wasn't any updates to it. Because, like I said, states do update their credit repair statutes. You could end up in a situation where you didn't have a bond last year, but they updated it, and now you have a bond requirement. And also, if you're not sure, you can call a bonding company, one word, Bonds Express, and they'll tell you if the state requires it, because they bond for each state that has a bond requirement, they sell bonds for.
Yeah,
So
I tend to use that kind of cheat sheet, right? I'll use like bonds.com. Like I'm talking to somebody, they're not sure if they need a bond. Oh, hey, let me go check. And I'll just go to like bonds.com and then I'll put in their state and just look it up and see if there's a credit repair services bond that's necessary. And they even give pricing that way. So I think that's kind of a good cheat way to go look that up. But it doesn't tell you if you need a license.
Right. You have to check the state statute for that purpose to make sure. And they're not going to give you that advice. They'll say, well, we don't give out legal advice. We don't give out advice on how you comply with the statute. You'll have to do the research because they don't want to be responsible for you not licensing if they say, well, we don't think you need a license. Right. So they're not going to do that either. So
if you draft an agreement for somebody, say somebody from the call decided, hey, I'm going to go call John because I need an agreement drafted for myself.
Yeah.
You look that up for them?
Yes.
And help them with if they need to be licensed, bonded, all the requirements. And so you help them with that when they come to you?
Yes, I will have a consultation with them and we'll discuss the date you're in. I'll look up the statutes. Let them know if they're not already aware that they are required to have a bond or a license. And they have an application they have to fill out, like California or Ohio, to help with those applications. There's a little bit of an extra fee if they're a long application, but I'm willing to help with that. Look up, make sure they have the most recent information of their statute, and I want to check it anyway to make sure that I'm to date on that statute, to make sure that agreement complies with that statute as far as their required language and things like that.
Okay,
So
and
if
I
I'm
think
Florida-
Albert has his hand up.
Okay.
Did you have a question?
Yes, John. I'm a realtor and I work with a lot of our veterans. So I offer a free service to our veterans. And I don't really have a CRO, and it's more as an extension of my business. I still this is legal matters and I have questions, and I probably need to go further in depth there. But in Florida, do you know if as long as I'm not collecting money, and do you think that works?
So some states have exceptions or exemptions, but CROA does not. So if you're doing any credit repair for a client, you are required to have a contract.
Gotcha. And
if he's not charging and he's a real estate agent, they still have to have a contract.
Well, you're not charged. So that's we have to look closer at the state statute and stuff like that. But what CROA says is if you're doing credit repair, you have to have a contract, right? If you have a contract, you're considered doing credit repair, right? So it's hard to see how you can get around having a contract, even if you're not charging.
Have a
You
contract
know,
with who?
what's that?
We need to have a contract with who?
For your
With your
client to
client.
sign for doing credit repair.
Okay. I'm in Florida. Can I help someone with their credit if they live in California? A client
Not
that
if
live in California.
you don't have a California state agreement for them to sign, because California is very strict and requires you to have follow all of their state statutes if you have a client in California. The other thing you have to be compliant with when you're doing intrastate clients, which are out-of-state clients, is that you have to make sure that you're following the TSR, which is the telecommunication
Sales rule.
telemarketing sales rule. Yeah, sorry. You have to be compliant with that. So I can talk to you about that. I don't want to go into depth about that. I can explain that more to you if you need more about that. But to tell you that the best way to serve a client in another state is that you have a system set up so the client can sign up and sign an agreement before you even talk to them on the phone. So if you can do that in an effective way, and those clients, then something you can consider doing. But you don't want to induce somebody into a contract that lives in another state over the phone, or you're in violation of the TSR. So what happened? Well, you're not in violation technically unless you take payment, right? So if a client ends up being a TSR client, then you cannot collect a payment, not one dime from them, until 6 months after you've satisfied the terms of the agreement. So if you have a 6-month agreement, then you have to make sure that you've done all your work on that 6 months agreement, that their credit has got there's been the credit repair has been successful, and then you can charge them 6 months after that. That's what happens if you have a
So
TSI.
TSR is kind of a whole other class, so we
Yes.
should probably stick to
Yes.
CROA because it will go down a rabbit hole if we
Yes,
start
we
going
will.
there.
Yes,
So
we will.
let's stick to CROA tonight.
Yes.
You definitely need to have a compliant contract for the state that your client is in.
Yes.
That's an important thing to know. Like, you don't want to be giving a Florida contract to a California client or an Arizona client. They should have the contract that matches their state. So for Credit
100%.
Butterfly users, we got you covered because we already took care of that for you, right? For anybody that's using Credit Butterfly, we did that for you. So you have access to state compliant contracts in all states. But if you don't, you should be getting with John so that he can write a contract for you, especially, states you're doing business in. Okay. For sure.
Yes.
Some other things, let's just cover some other things with CROA, John. Just some basic CROA, maybe talk about how CROA talks about payments.
So there's a couple things in CROA that people don't realize. So have the 3-day cancellation period, right? So CROA says that they don't want you to even do any work for the client for those 3 days. So you sign a client up, they sign the disclosure, clock starts ticking. 3 days later, then you can start work for them. That's what it says. The other thing is, you have a 3 business day rule, right? So it's 3 business days. So it was signed on a Friday, then Saturday and Sunday or holiday wouldn't count. So your first day would be Tuesday next week, right? Because Tuesday's or Wednesday next week, because Tuesday's a holiday, right? Distinct differences between CROA and state requirements when it comes to those types of things. Both want you to have your fees and your fee structure agreement and spelled out, total cost that the client's going to be paying for services that you're rendering for the term of the agreement, right? So if it's $100 a month for 6 months, that's $600, right? So that's got to say it's $600 a month, and the total is going to be up to $600. The end of that agreement that client could be paying.
Yes, the maximum, right? The maximum amount. That doesn't mean they have to pay that amount,
right?
But that's like the maximum that they're going to pay so that they don't get sticker
right.
shock down the road.
Yeah. So if you have a 6-month agreement and you're charging them $100 a month, that's $600. it says the total amount the client may pay for the life of this agreement is $600, then you cannot charge them $601, right? Or $650. It has to be $600. The other thing, there's a thing called, right? So stacking is when you include you charge a client fees that are not disclosed in the agreement. So if you have something the client has to pay in order for you to do your work, you are required to include that in your agreement. So that includes monitoring. So if you have a credit monitoring requirement for the client that has to sign up, you have to disclose that in your agreement, and you have to disclose what the cost to the client is for the course of that credit monitoring.
Yeah, like, so if you guys, anybody here that's using, we have a few Butterfly users here.
Yeah.
So they know when they sign up, when they set up their agreements in our system, right, they're gonna have to, number one, put in what's the maximum amount that you can charge, because that's, you put in your own pricing. Then they put in whatever pricing you're charging for credit monitoring goes in another spot. And then what you charge for like your credit evaluation and your action plan and per dispute round. So talk about that a little bit, if you could, John, about how you're charging. You're always charging in arrears. You're always doing the work first and then charging.
Yeah, no state, where you can charge someone before you've done any work for them, right? So you set it up so that you have people call a first work fee, right? So it's when you first talk to your client, this is after the free, CROs do a free evaluation, very quick call, just to kind of idea if they're even a good fit, you can even help them. And once the client signs the agreement, you have a more comprehensive conversation with them. You pull credit reports, you go over that with them, you discuss everything with them, and then you draft your first set of letters and things like that. That's when your first work fee can be charged, right? Then 30 days after that is typically when you charge your next fee, which is a dispute round fee, right? So it's every dispute round you're charging them, meaning you have done another round of disputes, then you charge them. It doesn't mean you do different rounds in a month and charge them 6 different times. It's one set of dispute round every 30, or cannot be any less than 30 days, right? And then you can charge them after you've done that next round of disputes.
Okay, definitely good information.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions on
Question is, do they have to sign the agreement before the free consultation or after signing the agreement?
So if you're in your own state, you're doing free consultation, you can talk to your client and discuss, like I said, you're getting to know whether this is going to be a good, because maybe you can't help them. Maybe they need a debt counselor. Maybe they need to talk to an attorney because they need to file a bankruptcy or something. After that free discussion, right, in your state, right, we're not talking about in-state clients. Once they want to right, then you need them to go through and sign all of the documents, including the disclosures in the agreement, before you start working.
Or out of state? What about the out of state?
So that's a totally different ballgame, because you need to have them sign that contract before you even talk to them. Unless you can do everything in a way that is done without talking to them on a phone. You can't use a Zoom call. That's considered a phone call, according to the statute. You have to do it in a way that it's all electronic, right? So they would have to do everything by messenger, email, like that.
Yeah, well, the good thing is there's a lot of tools out now, John. I don't know if you've seen them, like Free Score Now has some really amazing TSR compliant tools now for CROs, where you can put it out on your website. It's got a chat feature. You can email things back and forth and everything like that. So there's actually a lot of tools out there now, self boardings for your website. Always have these now. So TSR is not as prevalent as it was, you know what I mean, to worry about it, because most people are now bringing them on in a compliant way with the TSR.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that one. I knew there were some being worked on. I didn't know that one had
quite a few now. A lot of people are, there are people on without talking to them. Once they've signed the contract, they have them sign the contract first.
Yeah. Always a
talk to
good
them.
practice.
Yeah.
Get to sign the contract first.
Has a question. The contract have to have a price in it for out-of-state contracts.
Yes. You have to disclose your fees in your agreement, and it has to say how much the total max amount will be charged to the client for the life of the agreement.
Yeah, I think you always have to quote your fees, always. When they
Always.
sign an agreement, there's got to be, they have to know what they're signing and what they're getting into. Nathan says, what about for different packages? So you just have to have different agreements for your different packages, right, John?
Well, it depends on how your agreement's set up, but you can do what I do not recommend is having 5 or 6 different packages in your agreement. I think it's better to keep it simple for your clients so they're not confused. A minimum, you want to do individual and couple pricing, that's fine. But I had people that want to do couple, and then they want to do silver, bronze, and then they want to do pay per delete. And I mean, the stuff on there, that's 3 pages worth of fees, and I think it's just too confusing for the client. So I would keep it simple. Try to minimize the amount that you're adding to the agreement when it's related to fees.
I mean, I do have multiple agreements for states, but because I have your agreements built into my software, right? So I can go create all the different agreements I want with different pricing structures or names.
Yes, and I've done that for clients too.
Yeah.
Wanted to, pricing with couples, then they wanted a separate one that was delete. Sometimes they have clients that feel like they can service them better on a pay per delete basis because they don't have a lot of stuff and they don't want to charge them for 6 months worth of service, or monthly, because they think they can do it in less time just by getting that 1 or 2 things deleted. So it just all depends on what your business model is.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. The other thing is when you're setting up your fee structure, you need to be very careful. 2 things. One is if you have a website, disclose your fees on your website. There's no reason not to disclose your fees. I think that if you're not disclosing your fees, it makes you look more, people, it's a trust
shady.
thing, right?
Just say it, John. It makes you look shady if you don't have your fees up.
Yeah. The other thing is that do not overcharge. And I know that one of the most common things I get for fees, the question is, can I charge $1,000 for 6 months? I'm like, yeah, you can charge $1,000. You got to break it up for 6 months. They're like, no, can't I just get $1,000 and then the next 5 months are free? It doesn't work that way, right? Your fee structure has to be similar to what the market is, right? So if you pull 10 different credit repair organizations in the area that you service, which I'm sure you'll find 10 in the area you service, and you look at their website and they have fees on there, then that's what you want your market to, that's what the market is. That's what you want your fees to be, around those prices, so you can be competitive, right? You don't want to be too far above them. If you're charging hundreds above that, then you're not in the market, right? And you could be, the regulator could look at that and say, well, your fees are way above market. You're charging before your services are rendered because you're trying to front them, right? To get more fees up front. So you got to try to avoid that conversation.
Okay, good information.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any more questions for John? We still have like 10 minutes, so ask everything you want to ask.
What is the best strategy to get
The best strategy to get clients? That's probably a whole class. There's a lot of really good strategies to get clients. How new are you? How long have you been in the credit repair industry?
I started last year, then I stopped because I couldn't get any clients. So now I'm back in it again, learning the laws, the regulation, and how to help my clients.
Okay. I'm gonna go to YouTube and I'm gonna actually find you I'm gonna drop a link in here for you. We did a class on how to get loan officer leads, like all different ways you could go, like I think it's like different ways to get loan officer leads, which I think will help you. So I'm gonna drop
Yeah,
that in
that
the
would
chat for
help.
you. In
That
a
would be
second.
helpful. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Abel asks, who offers 6-month service on a 6-month contract for a one-time fee in California?
No, you have to
Okay,
break it up
that's an
monthly.
easy answer.
Yeah, you have to break it up monthly. California will deny your agreement. They'll say your agreement's not in compliance.
Yeah, the thing with California, you guys, you have to register in California, right? And you have to submit your agreement
Yep.
in
And your
California, and they have
disclosures.
to approve it. And John knows exactly what you need in that agreement to get approved. That is the one thing. If you're in California, you do not have an agreement and you need to get registered, everything in California, you definitely need to hit John up for that because he knows how to help you do that.
Yeah, several page of application. It's first overwhelming, but it really is not that bad when you start getting into it. But yes, they want a copy of your agreement, your disclosures. They want to make sure they're in compliance. Look at your TCPA, put a TCPA, which I do recommend. Theirs is more strict than other states as far as their TCPA. Different things about that. You kind of model your things after California, then you're usually going to be in pretty good shape because they're pretty strict.
Okay.
And I was going to suggest also, you asked about how you get clients. My experience, which has been several years, still, I think getting affiliates are probably one of the best ways. State agents, cars and loan money for cars, different types of people that have clients that need to have good credit in order to get loans. That's the best. If you can get good relationships with them, they'll continue to send you clients.
Hey, Kim, can you look on YouTube and see if we can drop that one for the loan officers? I'm not seeing it. Wanted to know, how much do you charge for your services and what other services do you provide?
So I draft contracts, and as I said before, if you are in a state that requires a application, I help those applications, and I do charge a small amount for that. But so for your first agreement, it's $495, and that includes your agreement and your disclosures. And if you have a second or third or fourth, that you have clients in that you want to serve, those are $250 a piece for each additional. And then I also draft contracts for other businesses, right? So the only types of contracts I do not draft are real estate agreements, because there are people that are much more qualified than me to do real estate.
What if can you help someone with insurance agent, like life insurance and health insurance agent?
What about what kind of help with the life
The
insurance?
contract. Do insurance agent need contract as well?
So if do you work with a life insurance company?
Yes.
Because typically those companies have their own contracts.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, so you'd probably want to make sure that you're using their contracts for your own life insurance. I did put my email in the chat there, so if anybody has questions later or anything, just send me an email. And I'm happy to answer your questions, schedule a consultation if you choose.
Yeah, I was going to put your email in, John.
Oh, the Bedell Group. Yeah, BDAL.com.
Yeah, so you can get a hold of John here. Oh, good one, Georgia. Let's dive deep on Georgia. Nathan wants to know, do you make agreements in Georgia and how do you stay compliant in Georgia? So let's hit that one. That's a good one. Thanks, Nathan.
Yeah, and you can't be compliant in Georgia unless you're an attorney. That's my answer.
Or a real estate agent.
Yeah, and I'd still be careful.
And you're doing it in the scope of your work and you're not charging.
Right. And so the arguments are, like I said with CROA, CROA says if you're doing credit repair, you have to have a contract. If you have a credit repair contract, then you're considered doing credit repair. So it's like, how can you not be out of compliance in Georgia, right? So it's kind of tricky. And I tried to get the attorney generals down in Georgia, the employees in the attorney general's office in Georgia, to talk to me about that. And I said, I don't do credit repair. I draft contracts for credit repair organizations. And one of their most common questions is, can we do credit repair in Georgia? And I tell them no. But there are exceptions, right? You have exceptions. So how do those exceptions work? We can't give you legal advice. I'm like, oh, what about nonprofits, right? So nonprofits can do credit repair in Georgia.
Right.
So that's if you're complying with the Georgia statute, or nonprofit, you may be able to do it. It's very, you really need to make sure you're talking to an attorney in Georgia to make sure that you're in compliance, because I don't think there's a way to be compliant in Georgia. I've talked to a lot of people about it, and I just don't know if there's a real way to do it. But I guess there's people that do it down there. But
Yeah, but yeah, you definitely have to be a nonprofit or an
yeah,
attorney or a real estate agent. And because Georgia, let's face it, Georgia hates credit repair
yeah,
with
they
a
do.
passion. I'm literally made it a misdemeanor, you guys. It's like a criminal offense to do credit repair in
Yeah,
Georgia. It's really
it's
crazy.
yeah,
I really hate it. Like
yeah,
that.
and 49 other states,
Yeah, you have plenty
right?
of
I
other
mean,
states to pick from.
yeah,
I would just steer clear. So there's a few
yeah.
states, actually, we should bring that up. There's a few states that are really not credit repair friendly. Which states are those, John?
So South Carolina, I would stay away from. You can only charge $50 a month, I think, for your service, and you have to get finance or something like that. And you have to keep that up. And I just don't think that it's, doing it for trying to help people out, or you have a business that refers you a lot of clients. I don't think it's cost effective, but maybe also one of the ones that, a 10-day wait period for your cancellation too. But if, point, if you don't care if the client decides they want to cancel, I think it's good to keep a client that doesn't want to be your client. So, I mean, it's 3 months later, I would recommend you let them cancel so that you don't have a dispute with your client. So, but Oregon's another one that has limits on the amount you can charge, and they also have more strict guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
So South Carolina, Oregon, and Georgia are the three that I would stay away from.
What was there one more or was that it? I felt
I
like
think
there was
that was
one.
it, if I
I felt
remember
like
right.
there was one more. Oh, Albert, did you have another question?
Yes, Stephanie, that's where I got my whole idea was from you. And talking about Georgia, and tying it into my real estate model. And I also work with our veterans, so tying it all together. Kudos to you, young lady. Yes, because how I make it up is on the back end. Okay, because yes, we charge on the front end. Okay, and we be careful of compliance. And yes, we should be in compliance, of course. But on the back end, it's like McCarthy law, they 8,000 to 2,500. Is there any other sources that you recommend? Residuals could go after?
So another type of contract that I draft, I call it a compliance promise to pay agreement. And that is if you have a partnership with a law firm that takes credit repair to review for possible actions, because a credit bureau creditor violated their rights, TC or the debt collection
FDCPA.
practice. Yeah, yeah. Have a relationship law firm, then this agreement, you can have your client sign this agreement, and then that gives you the authority to forward that file the attorney to review. And then if the attorney decides to take them on as a client, then they have a relationship with attorney until that case is disposition. And in the agreement, it says if they get a settlement or an award, then they owe you a percentage of that settlement or award. And it's an enforceable agreement. If they don't, most of the time, I think that your clients will be happy to pay you if they get a bunch of money from the attorney that's not even going to charge them, because the attorneys don't charge them money for these types of cases. They get
Okay,
paid.
so you do those agreements.
Yes. Yes.
Well, we're be offering it that agreement table in Credit Butterfly eventually. So it might be talking to John about that.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I do is power of attorney. You need a power of attorney. And you.
Yes. Oh, go ahead, John.
Oh, go ahead.
Cindy wants to add something to this part when you're done with your thought there.
Yeah, Cindy.
You want So John and I have actually had that exact multiple times about building fees in on the back end. And one I want to clarify is that the client is the one paying that percentage fee most of time. because there's one exception to the rule. The attorney is not going to pay that percentage, right?
Right, it doesn't pay you. You have to get that payment from the client once the case is disposition.
Yeah, I just want to throw that out there
Yeah.
so that there was like absolute clarity. I don't know any law firms that will actually cut you a portion that way.
That's not allowed. They're not allowed
No.
to split fees with
Mm-mm.
non-attorneys. They
No.
have to pay the consumer directly. That's
Right, and if
any
you
attorney.
right, and they won't take a client if you put a lien against their award either, right? So you're not putting a lien against them. You're just having a separate agreement with your client that says that if this case goes, then you can, then we settle out after that kind of thing. So
Yeah, really good.
Yeah.
Because now people know how all this stuff works with like the compliance, with the compliance that you can refer over to attorneys, and it's just it's a good money making strategy for credit repair.
yeah, I mean, basically cover all of the fees for the credit repair just in one case.
Yeah, really
very,
great.
very, yeah. The like identity are very, very good. There's and if you have a violation with
files, there's because like we actually have a compliance tracker inside of Credit Butterfly that identifies them for you.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, because you have a violation with Equifax, and you have a violation with TransUnion cases, and most of them are a minimum of $1,000, right?
Right.
Minimum. So yeah, it's idea to get with a law firm if you have one, and clients sign that agreement, because 9 times out of 10 you're going to find a possible violation that you can refer them to, and you might as well get to it.
Yeah, exactly. We're all about that over at Credit Butterfly. We love it. So I just want to also say that I did drop that YouTube link in. I just want to make sure Jones got that YouTube link. It's for referrals on repeat, how to fill your credit
Yeah,
repair.
I got it. Too blank. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, you're very welcome. Nathan wants to know, with your agreement, can we send dispute letters on behalf of clients and send over to attorneys?
So is he asking me or you?
You, right? Asking John, right, Nathan?
So if I understand your question, the credit repair agreement is separate from the compliance review agreement. So your credit agreement gives you the ability to send those letters for the client. A power of attorney, if you have one, some credit repair organizations use them. I don't have an opinion on that. That's up to you. If you use power of attorney, then you're sending the letters on behalf of the client with your letterhead, and you're communicating directly with them, and they're sending the correspondence back to you, right? So that's the credit repair agreement. The compliance review agreement says that if you identify a potential violation, you have the right to send their file over to an attorney for review, and that attorney reviews that, and if they take the client on and they get a settlement or award, they're agreeing in that agreement to pay you a percentage of that settlement or award. So that's two separate agreements.
Answer your question, Nathan? Okay. Okay. I love that we have some people on this call tonight that are pretty savvy with these agreements and know how to use them, and definitely can use a good drafted agreement. A question: business funding be similar contracts? I know nothing about business funding, so
yeah, it would not be a similar contract. It would be a different contract, and I've drafted those as well, because I do have clients that do both credit repair and business credit, and also some that do just business funding, and so have agreements with terms that spell out what the is for the client. Is they have to have a certain credit score, provide certain documents. They have to. So there's different things in those agreements that hold the client and the business.
So that's good to know. So go ahead and list through the different agreements that you do draft. What are the different types of agreements that you draft?
So credit repair agreement, right? Power of attorney, compliance review and promise to pay, business credit, some affiliate agreements, Some do consulting agreements, not related to credit repair. They're a consulting agreement. Someone out credit building. So that would be like if you're doing something related to consumer credit building, then technically it could be credit repair. So I'd have to know more about what you're doing. But if it's a credit repair element or it could be considered, you got to be really careful. You know, there's kind of a there, so you have to be really careful.
If they have no credit, that I think that just falls into credit repair, honestly.
Yeah, it's 9 times out of 10, yes, I believe it would fall under credit repair.
Yeah. So, okay, Nathan's getting into healthcare industry. Are you familiar with that industry compliance standards agreements?
Depends on the agreement that you need, but yeah, I actually need labor contracts for doctors for a while.
Okay.
So I'm for that industry.
I think what you guys need to understand is John is a contract writer, right? He's a
specialist.
Contracts, a contract specialist. So he can probably write up just about any contract that you would be able to need.
Yeah. I just in state specific credit repair agreements because, I fell in, it's a very specific niche.
Yeah, that's very nichey. In fact, I think you're the only one in the niche.
Yes. Yes.
So, okay, so just about it's that time. We're going to end for tonight, but I really appreciate you coming on, John. Every time you come on, you're always a wealth of information. I always learn something new. I'm telling you, every single time you're on, I totally learn something new every single time. So I just appreciate you so much and I'm grateful that you came to talk to everybody tonight.
No, I'm always happy to do this. I make sure people that are doing this business are compliant and, because it has a negative connotation to it sometimes and people to make sure they're following the rules and the laws and, one of the things they need to have. So I'm always happy to talk about it.
Yeah, I just put John's email back in. John at it's the Bedell group.
Bedell. At the Bedell
Group.com. I just put it in there again. So if anybody wants to reach out to him, if you need any agreements, feel free to reach out directly to him. He'd be happy to help you.